Hello YouTube, it's me again. It is February 22nd, 2021. I want to discuss a little bit about the Texas power disaster. First, I'm going to start off talking about the problems that I saw that occurred, and then I'm going to go into possible solutions that you can have as workarounds to get past those problems in the future, especially for those that want to be proactive and not dependent upon the system to be rescued. First, we're going to talk about as far as the solar panels, the people that have solar generators, as long as it remained cloudy, they got very little power, if any, from them. So those didn't exactly work. Those who had propane systems for generation or for heat, if they did not stock propane ahead, which most didn't, from what I saw the long lines of people standing in line for propane, they found that within so many hours the propane was gone and there was no extra to be found anywhere. Another problem was refrigerators and deep freezers went down, and people within 24 to 36 hours was throwing all that food out. Even the grocery stores, when the power went down, had to throw a lot of the food out, and the police found themselves having to guard the dumpsters where desperate people who hadn't prepared were out there trying to raid the dumpsters for food. Then there was people who died due to exposure and also what I call lack of knowledge. And I'll give you an example. There was a woman and her young son, I guess, who died in a car because they went to sleep in the car that night, and they did not realize that, turning that car on and not having a garage door open, that carbon monoxide would have killed them. So it took their life, basically. And that I thought that was common knowledge, but apparently it's not. Another item was that banks were closed. Once the power went down, the banks automatically shut down, and people lost access to their money. Even those who were cryptocurrency rich, that wanted to liquidate and get to some cash in a hurry, found that cash was unacceptable because their cryptocurrencies was inaccessible. Then you had the fact that with no power, you can't run the pumps at the gas stations. So the gas stations were shut down. Then as far as food supply chain, it was broken. Again, the stores, most of them were closed. You couldn't get access to anything. And then there was no trucks or anything bringing food in. So the few stores that were open, that found a way to be open, within a few hours, 2 or 3 hours, it was over with. You had people standing in line for 2 and 3 hours just to get inside to find that there was nothing once they got inside. There was no water. Once the emergency battery stuff ran down, people lost water pressure, and then there's also the fact that a lot of water pipes burst, which again, no water. And the thing about with motels and hotels where a lot of those people went to, once those hotels and motels lost water pressure, they had to throw those people out. Even though they was paying $475 and higher to be there, they had to throw them out, because once you can't flush the toilets, that becomes a health risk. So everybody had to leave. And where were they going to go but back to their freezing homes? Then there's the fact of price gouging, which was astronomical. I just couldn't believe how high the price gouging was getting on both motel rooms, food and water, other essentials. It was just ridiculous. Even if you could find propane or gasoline or different things that you needed, it was 4 to 10 times higher. And we have yet to see if anyone will be brought to bear by the government for all the price gouging that was going on. Even the power companies that was providing emergency natural gas and power was charging bills, from what I'm hearing, $475 a day. Some of those people are facing $10,000 to $17,000 emergency bills, and that doesn't make any sense. Then there was the slow to no police response. Police were so overwhelmed and that they just couldn't come to everybody's call. And you had a lot of people who counted on their burglar alarm systems to save them. They had fancy cameras, fancy alarms. They felt if something was to happen, they can just punch a button and the police would be there, and they didn't have to have no form of self-defense whatsoever because the police would be there to rescue them. Well, they found out the hard way that system failed. And then there's all the looting that's going on. The stores, by desperate people, are breaking in and looting. And then you have the takers that figure that if you have something that they need and you don't have the ability to defend yourself, they would just come and take it from you, and that's going on. So those were the main problems that I basically saw. And the workarounds is what I want to discuss now, things that you could do to get around those situations. Now, with the banks being down, the best thing you could do is keep money in your home. And even with your cryptocurrencies, keep some emergency money in your home and keep it in ones, fives, and tens if you can. Because if you go to a store and the item is $20, is say $10, and all you got are 20s, you got to take the loss on that money. So to avoid taking unnecessary losses, if you need an item that bad, have ones, fives, and tens and emergency money at your house so that you're able to go out and purchase some things that you're going to need. And that's if you feel that you have to go out. Is that at least I would say you don't want to be out there in those crowds of desperate people because it's dangerous. Then another thing would be water. All your bottled water, you should have at least 10 to 15 cases of bottled water on hand. That's enough water for a family of 4 or 5 to last them 30 days to 6 weeks in a disaster. All your bottled water has to be reserved for drinking water only. Do not let nobody pour it down the back of a toilet, keep a toilet going. That's ridiculous. Next would be your bathtub. The power goes out. What harm would there be in, while you still got water pressure, fill your bathtub up with some water? You're going to use that water to take light wash-ups with and to have a bucket handy to be able to pour 2 to 3 gallons of water down the back of your toilet to keep your toilet running. Because with no water pressure, again, it becomes a health risk to have a toilet filling up with feces and you have no way to get it out of your house. And it's going to get pretty rank as well. So to keep that toilet running, fill up your bathtub with water, dip out of it as needed. And there's an old saying that if it's yellow, it's mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. So you can go with that concept of when you're going to need to flush that toilet. And if you have some containers of bleach on hand, when it's yellow and it's mellow, you can pour a Clorox bleach into that water, and that'll help kill the smell and any bacteria that could be forming. And then when necessary, flush it down. Then I say the next thing would be if you have any containers, like you've got a 5-gallon water cooler that you take to the picnics or something, fill it up. If you got some empty Pepsi liter bottles laying around that you've cleaned out, fill them up. Because you are only going to last so long as you've got food and water. And according to the rule of 3, you only can last 3 days without water. So water is crucial to life. So if you got empty containers, fill them up. And the next thing I'm going to say is going to be gasoline. You've got to maintain your car on at least a half a tank or more. If your car is a 1985 or newer, it's kept in great shape, and you're keeping it well serviced, you go 175 miles in any given direction if you had to vacate. Now, with a half a tank or to a whole tank, in the event that you had to sleep in your car overnight like those people were doing just to stay warm, you'll have the gas to be able to do so. You don't want to freeze to death for lack of having made some advanced provisions. So keep at least a half a tank to a full tank of gas, especially when you have 3 days advance notice that something's getting ready to happen. Go out, fill your gas tank up, or at least put it on half full if you don't have the money. Then you want to have extra gas cans on hand of gasoline. Get you some fuel stabilizer that you can pour into it. Now to keep the gas good for 2 years. But what harm would it do to have one or two extra cans of gas on hand? Especially knowing that the gas stations were all down because there was no power to run the pumps. Then the next thing would be food or water. Maintain at least a 30-day supply of food and water in your pantry. And your pantry should include toiletries, toothpaste, toilet paper, paper towels, napkins, plasticware, so you don't have to burn up your water, uh, paper plates, paper cups. Again, you don't want to be having to wash dishes, so everything should be disposable at that point. And along with that, you want to have some cold weather gear on hand. Adequate clothing for the weather. In my area, I get tired of seeing grown folks and children running around with hooded sweatshirts on, a zip up hoodie, and that's it. It could be 20 degrees outside, and they're running around with hoodies on. I asked them why, and they're telling me that that's the style. I don't care about style. I care about staying healthy and not getting sick. And anyone that tells me that that's a style is a damn fool. I can tell you that right now. That's ridiculous. And you don't want to be freezing out there. You want to have adequate coat, adequate headgear on, because you're going to lose 90% of your heat around your head anyway. You can buy socks that are wool, and if you don't want to get the wool socks, get at least the hiking socks because they're thicker than regular socks. You need an adequate pair of boots that's going to keep your feet good, because when those toes freeze up and you lose mobility, it's almost game over. And I'm going to tell you something else that's almost game over. When you lose these, it's so cold in any survival situation, you lose your hands to where you cannot care for yourself or for others. It's game over. So that means you need adequate pair of gloves to keep your hands warm. So these hooded sweatshirts and your hands are stuck in the pockets of the hoodie, that don't work if you really want to make it in a survival situation. Then next would be to please purchase a dual fuel generator. Dual fuel means it runs on propane as well as gasoline. If you can't find one, you might be able to find the other. But you should have extra gas and propane stored back to run different things on. So if you can't get a dual fuel generator, if you can't find one, get you at least a gasoline generator. As we already saw that the wind turbines and the solar panels, because of the overhead clouds, the solar panels didn't work. The wind turbines got iced up with snow and ice and couldn't spin, and both those systems failed. So at least have your generator. Now I did see an interesting thing where Ford F-150, this one guy had one and it had a built-in generator system in it. I don't know if they call it a contractor's truck or what, but he was using it to run his appliances on and heaters inside his house. And he was pulling it over to his neighbor's house to run it, and it did a great job. So I don't know how much those cost, but that would be worth the investment right there. Next would be alternative cooking methods. Store you back some extra bags of charcoal and charcoal lighter fluid. Get you a Coleman grill that runs off the little 1 pound fuel canisters. Get you a gas grill and store back 2 or 3 tanks of propane gas for it. You have to have the ability to cook hot meals when you lose power and it's freezing outside. Next thing would be alternative means of heating. Again, you can get what they call a Big Buddy heater. It's a small unit, it's portable. It runs off again the Coleman 1 pound gas canisters, or you can get the adapter kit to run it off the gas grill, big gas propane tanks. I would have both if it was me. But have you an alternative means of heating, have your kerosene heater, propane heaters, have something that you can fall back on. Because again, you don't want your hands and feet to freeze up. If they do, it's game over once you lose the ability to be able to move and the ability to be able to grip and grab things with your hands. it's just about game over with at that point. Then another thing you'd want to do when your refrigerators and freezers are no longer working and it's cold outside, it's freezing outside, open up the trunk of your car, back your car out into the cold, open up the trunk of your car and fill it up with your food and stuff so you don't have to throw it away. Use your trunk of your car as a refrigerator or a freezer. It'll still keep the stuff frozen because it's cold outside. Don't let the food go bad in the house. That's just lack of knowledge, and it's an easy workaround. It's just go out there and utilize your vehicle to store the food in. But you got to watch, because if some of the neighbors and stuff see you doing it, they might break your windows out to steal it, or crowbar your trunk to try to get at some of your food if they're starving. But utilize what you have at hand, repurpose things, and it'll go a long ways to getting you through a situation. Then you need to have an alternative means of lighting. Okay, candles, lamps, anything that's going to generate light, flashlights. Have your blackout kit already, just a little tote that have extra batteries, flashlights, candles, different things in it, matches, and in an emergency, you've already got that set up. You can go get it, break it out, and there's light throughout your house. Don't do without light. When that's a simple fix, as cheap as what candles cost today. And I'm also going to say that you have to remember that dependency, when you're dependent upon a system and you have no backup plan in place, you're setting yourself up for failure. This life of yours is your responsibility. It's not somebody else's responsibility to have to come and rescue you. It's your responsibility to take measures into your own hands. And you want to prep ahead of time, because if you don't prep ahead of time, you do what I saw a lot of those people do. You wait till the disaster happens and then you go out and try to find what you need. That sets yourself up for failure. When the disaster happens, your opportunity to prepare has passed. You're nothing but almost like a refugee at that point, running around looking for resources that you're not going to find. And if you find them, you're going to have to pay through the nose to acquire them. And it's a bitter pill to have to swallow. And instead of arguing with somebody and getting into a fight, or having takers try to take stuff from you as you come out of a store, have your stuff stocked ahead of time so you don't have to go out there in that dangerous environment. Plan ahead and be prepared. But I hope some of the stuff that I've told you is helpful. And again, the last thing I want to cover is going to be security. Please have some form of self-defense on hand, because in those situations, even the best neighbor you've got, if they get desperate enough and they know you have something that they can use, they could become your worst enemy. So get you some stuff on hand and have it handy to defend yourself and be able to defend your preps. Because I even had a friend that when we had tornadoes a few years ago, he had his generator running outside. He had put gas in it that morning, right around 12 noon. The generator went out, and he thought that was unusual. So he went to go look, and there were two sizable guys out there with pistols tucked into their belts. Each one grabbed each side of his generator and was pulling his plugs out and was starting to carry it off. He had to go outside with an AK-47 and pointed at him and tell him to put his generator down. And from what he told me, individually, either one of those guys could have whipped him. He said this was a small guy, he weighed probably 150 pounds. But he said when he told him to put the generator down, they turned around and looked at each other like they was trying to decide whether or not to draw their pistols and try to shoot it out with him. But when they kept looking at that AK and he was pointing it at them, they decided to put it down and go walking back up the street. And he saw where they went to was a house that an elderly couple stayed in, and he figured that they must have been their sons. But they heard his generator running from half a block away, knew what that sound was. They put two guns in their belt, and they came to his house to take it. And seeing that they had guns with them, they had already made a decision that they were going to do him harm to take his generator. It was just superior firepower that made them think differently. So whatever you do, get out in front of these things. If it happened in Texas, it can happen anywhere. I mean, Texas, you have three power grids in the United States. You have the East grid, you have the West grid, and then you have Texas. Texas has its own grid. So if a major grid goes down, it could be regional. It could take out several states or a whole bunch of area. And you think, well, I'll just go to the next town or something, get a motel. That may not be an option. So get out in front of this. Don't let this happen to you. Plan ahead. And everyone out there, have a good day. Bye-bye.